Good evening, I'm Fanashe and this is AWANI Tonight. The government has set up a special committee to look into all citizenship matters in the country. Home Minister Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail says his ministry is preparing a cabinet paper on this issue, which will be tabled by February.
Saifuddin's announcement comes after Law and Institutional Reform Minister Datuk Seri Azalina Othman Said's statement that the government will propose to amend the Federal Constitution's citizenship rule. A group of mothers are currently appealing to overturn an earlier decision by the Court of Appeal that barred them from conferring Malaysian citizenship to their children born overseas. Saifuddin said the ongoing case would not hinder the new administration's commitment to look into the issue through a constitutional amendment, adding that it would allow the case to go through due process in court. Meanwhile, he said Putrajaya also aimed to address the issue of pending citizenship applications. According to him, the National Registration Department received a total of 54,000 applications, of which 7,000 have been approved while 36 others are being processed. The rest were either unsuccessful or had been rejected.
Malaysia and Indonesia have agreed to further strengthen the protection of Indonesian migrant workers. The two leaders, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim with Indonesian President Joko Widodo, gave their commitment in a joint press conference at the National Palace in Bogor, Indonesia.
Saya menyambut baik komitmen Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim dalam memberikan perlindungan bagi pekerja migran Indonesia. Saya sangat berharap one channel system untuk perekrutan dan penempatan pekerja migran Indonesia benar-benar bisa kita jalankan bersama.
Anwar reassured Jokowi that both sides would ensure that employment agencies would not make a high profit by exploiting migrant workers.
Kita insya-Allah akan menghindari isu-isu yang boleh merenggangkan dan meretakkan hubungan, kerana saya mahu hubungan Malaysia-Indonesia itu agak kategorinya special. Dan saya harap kedua-dua menteri luar faham bahawa komitmen kita begitu rupa. Jadi soal TKI ini yang mengguris perasaan ramai rakyat Indonesia, bukan saja pemerintah.
Anwar is currently in Indonesia on a 2-day state visit at the invitation of his Indonesian counterpart, his first official visit outside the country since being sworn in as the Prime Minister on November 24th last year.
The two leaders also agreed to work together to fight against discrimination against palm oil. Malaysia and Indonesia are the world's two largest producers of palm oil, making up 85% of total global production.
Kita juga tadi bersepakat memperkuat kerjasama melalui Council of Palm Oil Producing Countries, CPOPC, untuk meningkatkan pasar minyak kelapa sawit dan memerangi diskriminasi terhadap kelapa sawit.
The campaign against palm oil has been spurred primarily by the European Union's refusal to recognize palm oil-based fuel as a renewable fuel. The bloc also plans to phase out the use of palm oil by 2030. It reached an agreement in December last year to ban the import of several products, palm oil, beef, soy, coffee, cocoa and timber, which were grown or raised on land that was subjected to deforestation or forest degradation. They also discussed the development of Indonesia's planned new capital Nusantara in eastern Kalimantan. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said Malaysia is keen on the development of Nusantara, given the new capital's regional economic importance and proximity to Sabah and Sarawak.
Ada kepentingan Malaysia juga, untuk terutama di Sabah dan Sarawak, ya, kedekatannya dan kepentingan ekonomi wilayah yang sangat bermakna. Rakan-rakan saya di Sarawak dan Sabah memuji inisiatif ini, dan saya beritahu tadi itu inisiatif besar Bapak Presiden itu mempersilahkan saya, kerana dibanding dengan apa yang saya mampu lakukan untuk Sabah dan Sarawak. Jadi oleh itu kita ambil pendekatan yang positif, itu mencari jalan supaya pertumbuhan ibu kota negara Nusantara itu akan juga memberi manfaat kepada wilayah yang termasuk Sarawak dan Sabah.
Earlier, the two leaders witnessed the handing over of 11 letters of intent from 10 Malaysian companies to participate in the development of Nusantara. These include companies such as Berjaya Corporation, Tenaga Nasional, Pharmaniaga, Alliance MEP, Sarawak, Bolstered Properties and Kasem. One of the pertinent issues facing the Malaysian-Indonesian diplomacy is labour protection. The two ASEAN nations pledged to ensure better protection of migrant workers. How do we do that and where do we begin? Dr. Zokri Idris weighs in on labour issues that can be ironed out to restore Indonesia's confidence.
From the Malaysian side, we need to restore the confidence not only to Indonesia, but perhaps to other parts of ASEAN or other countries that supply workers to Malaysia onto their rights, as well as the welfare and well-being of them while being in Malaysia. Now, we have to look at the legal framework that we have at the moment. Now, so far, Section 60A of the Employment Act 1955 has provided a basic and sufficient rights to workers who earn below 2,000 ringgit Malaysia. And there is also an extension of this Employment Act to migrant workers as well.
He added that keeping track of foreign workers in the country is another way to better protect them from any form of exploitation and violation.
We also need to look into the database system. The Ministry of Human Resources should have an accurate as it can the amount of migrant workers in Malaysia, where there are, what are their details, how much are they earning, any complaints about that, so that it will be easy for us to keep track on them. So if we have the data, we know that we're thereabouts, as well as the protection and enforcement. I think these are the ways preliminarily Malaysia can do in order to restore the confidence of Indonesia to make sure that Malaysia is a good place to work for.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Unique. As a bank, it's what drives us to do right by you. Welcome back. A political storm is brewing in Sabah as Gabungan Rakyat Sabah GRS Chairman Datuk Sri Hajiji claims to have the support of 44 assemblymen to remain as Chief Minister. Political analyst Dr. Arnold Puyo discusses Hajiji's chances of keeping his government intact.
Well, I think the chances for Hajiji to remain as a Chief Minister are high. There are a number of reasons for this. Number one, I do not think the Wakil Rakyat in Sabah are willing to topple Hajiji and to topple the government at the moment. Because I think as Wakil Rakyat, they can read the mood of the people. They can understand the situation on the ground. If you read the responses, the feedback from the social media, I think most want political stability, and then they want the present government to remain until the next term. And any attempt to bring down the government at the moment by any Wakil Rakyat is just, for me, meaningless. That's number one. Second, I also do not think there are any viable alternatives in terms of a better CM or a better state government than Hajiji and the GRS government. I'm not saying that Hajiji is the best chief minister that we have. I'm not saying also that GRS is the best government that we have. They have many weaknesses, but at least they are trying their best to respond to the needs and voices of the people on the ground. And also in terms of implementing MS3, I would say that they have made some good progress. And thirdly, I think the federal government also wants to see Sabah politics stabilized at the moment. I expect the PM to take, the middle path in solving the political crisis in Sabah. There are already suggestions that the current government in Sabah to replicate the unity government at the federal level.
On to international news. In Brazil, more than 400 people had been arrested for attacking 3 government buildings on Sunday, unleashing chaos in the capital city of Brasilia. Thousands of supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro stormed the Congress, Supreme Court and Presidential Palace. Security officials who were initially overwhelmed by the invaders succeeded in regaining control by evening.
The attacks came only a week after the inauguration of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who defeated far-right Bolsonaro in October in one of the closest ever elections. Many of those who attacked the buildings claimed the election was stolen from Bolsonaro. Sunday's incident amounted to one of the worst attacks against democracy in Brazil since the military coup in 1964. The attack was also compared to the invasion of the US Capitol by followers of Donald Trump in January 2021, which prompted the largest criminal investigation in US history. President Lula was not in Brasilia at the time of the attack, but he gave an angry speech blaming Bolsonaro for encouraging the attackers by repeatedly questioning the integrity of the electoral process. Lula announced a federal security intervention in Brasilia, bringing policing under the control of the central government, lasting until 31st January.
Meanwhile, Thailand withdrew a rule requiring foreign travellers to carry proof of COVID-19 vaccination just days after reinstating the barrier ahead of the arrival of Chinese tourists. Its Health Minister Anutin Charnvirakul made the announcement today, citing sufficient immunization levels in China and globally.
He said the vaccine certificate rule was inconvenient and a panel of experts had resolved that it was unnecessary as enough vaccinations had been administered globally.
Now we can say Thailand freely open for all tourists from all over the world, provided that every concerned party will have to be cautious as per the health regulations that stated in Thailand.
The vaccine-proof rule was brought back last week as the country prepared for a wave of tourist arrivals from China, following Beijing's decision to reopen the country to the world and scrap quarantine for arrivals from Sunday. Still, Thailand will require travellers coming from nations which insist on negative RT-PCR test results for entry to have adequate health insurance to cover the cost of treatment in case of getting infected while visiting the country. The first flight of Chinese visitors since the pandemic started to arrive in Thailand on Monday, carrying an initial group of nearly 3,500 passengers on the first day. Anutin said Thailand was now expecting 7 to 10 million Chinese visitors, compared to an earlier estimate of 5 million.
Iran has sentenced 3 more people to death for allegedly killing members of the Iranian security forces during protests triggered by the death of Mahsa Amini. The latest sentences, which can still be appealed, bring the total number of people condemned to death to 17.
According to Iran's judiciary, the 3 men were sentenced to death on charges of muharibah, or waging the war against God. 2 others were handed prison terms for an incident that led to the deaths of 3 security force members on November 16th. Iran has been rocked by civil unrest following the death of 22-year-old Amini, who was arrested for violating the country's strict dress code for women. Out of the 17 people sentenced to death over the protests, 4 have been executed and 2 others are on death row. On Saturday, Iran executed Mohammad Mehdi Karami and Said Mohammad Hosseini for killing a paramilitary force member in November in west of Tehran. The executions have sparked global outrage and new Western sanctions against Tehran.
That is all we have for you on Awani tonight. I'm Fana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.